hotter the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A theist serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Back again. It's been a minute.
A couple.
I forgot how to podcast.
How do words?
How words happen.
That's not true because we teach all the time. So
I have a cool bit on what it's like to be a co-host and friend of Kevin.
all right, let's hear it.
Okay. So there we were. And Kevin was like, hey, dude, I have this really cool idea for the podcast. And I was like, oh, dude, bet. And he was like, yeah, no cap. And then he was like, dude, we're going to do March Madness for Battle Buddies. I was like, dude, this sounds tight, dude. Fucking send it. Let's make it happen. And he was telling me all these cool ideas about March Madness. And we were going to do like generals and do March Madness for that. And it was a fucking awesome idea. And then the next day I come in and Kevin's like, do you want to start a band?
That's true. That did happen.
Yeah,
just
it's
like
fun
that.
stuff. I'm not upset. I'm married to a person who does the same thing. So it's all good.
I have great notes on it. So the thing is that the idea just wasn't solid. I wasn't okay enough with the idea being rushed through it.
Starting a band?
No. Start a band
Just
whenever.
joking.
Yeah. Mr. Strong was like, are you open to starting a band? And I was like, am I going to start a band with you, Mr. Strong?
And so are you guys going to?
Yeah, I was like, I'll absolutely start a band with you, man.
And what is it called?
I don't know.
Isn't that step one?
No. Well, when you work the retail job, that's when you make up the band names, like Emergency Drinking Water, The Sounds of Friends, Mom Jeans. These were all band names I would come up with at work.
I'm wearing a Mom Jeans shirt as we speak.
Yeah, I was really mad that they got it.
Docile Dude.
Docile Dude.
Yeah, that's my math rock band name.
That's a good one.
We're Docile Dude. We're from fucking Sacramento.
What was the Vacaville band? And my friends were Alarm Will Sound.
Alarms
Alarms will sound. Because like when you like fire alarm, it says alarms will sound. So that was their band name. Pretty good.
Neat.
And then their improv group was Astronauts Tying Astronauts.
Oh, that's fun.
That's fun.
I like that one better. Yeah, there was this one really shitty name from a band that was from Vacaville. They called themselves like Papa Roach or something.
Oh yeah, Roach Fest.
Of Mice and Men. They're also from Vacaville.
All right.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Battle Buddies. We're here to talk about war.
Let's talk about it.
Holy shit, this is the last epic finale part of Masters of the Air. Wow. What a long book.
No matter what, this will be our last part of it.
I'm over it. It was fun. We had a great time.
I was like, I enjoy it. But as Spencer and I have had these talks and we look at some data of like listener stuff, and I can't imagine by like part 8, like we're still getting a lot of like interest in a topic. I think people are ready to move on. I think we're definitely ready to move on and like tie up the story as best we can.
I'm extremely excited to wrap this up and move on.
Yeah. There is some things that are pretty interesting. Before we start, so I had a Holocaust speaker come talk to my 8th graders, which was dope.
That's one way to put it.
It was awesome.
It was
awesome.
actually really extraordinary. Our school was very proud of Kevin for putting that together.
And I'm not going to use like her full name or anything because she's like very protective of her story, which I totally understand.
Yeah.
So I'll just call her Liz. And one thing that she had said, and I'm going to misquote it. I kind of like changed the quote a little bit, but the idea is like the exact same. And that was, whether they are invaders or saviors, the bombs feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she started the talk. And again, that's like not a direct quote. She is really protective of her story. And so I'm trying not to like plagiarize her story. I'm trying to just take a little snippet of it and
honor it.
Yeah. Move on from there. But I think that that's a good perspective to have going into like our final stretch of these dudes dropping bombs on just things for hundreds of pages and many years.
Yeah.
Remembering like both the victims on both sides, and like the civilians like trying to go through this.
Yep. Yeah.
Um,
we have a coworker named Jerry, and he started reading this book because he found it at Costco and listening to us talk about it, and he was like, "Yeah, so they were really just dropping bombs, huh? Like they were
A lot of them.
really just doing that." Yeah, and I do appreciate towards the end of the book, which we're about to go over, that he mentions like some of the people that were involved in this, and then when Vietnam came along, like Operation Rolling Thunder, they were like, "Hey, just so we're clear, that doesn't work. Like we have been
Right.
down this road."
Yeah,
before."
we've learned a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking at like chapter 13 and such, he starts all of the chapters with like a little epitaph thing. And some of them are better than others. Some of them are really good. This one I really liked. I just found it really appropriate. It said, "I wanted wings until I got the goddamned things. Now I don't want them anymore. They taught me how to fly and sent me here to die. I've had my belly full of war." So that's an Army Air Corps song that they used to sing.
That's sick.
That's a dope song.
Yeah, that's dope.
And that really fits with the themes that we've kind of been talking about this whole series of just brutality and like guys not really understanding what they're signing up for, and it being a new way to wage war that we essentially will never have again because of nuclear bombs and such.
Yeah.
But it's fucking wild.
Definitely was channeling some of our inner last podcast on the left. I felt a little bit like Henry Zabrowski, like, I am having nightmares.
Yeah,
I
right?
am legitimately, this is affecting my sleep. And it was. Like, it's fucking traumatic shit that you have to read through the Masters of the Air.
Yeah. And I think also, as we explored this topic, and I think also Donald Miller, and I think anybody who's approached this topic, the scope of it just can't help but enlarge.
It's vast.
And once you start diving into any of the materials, you're just like, holy shit, this is way bigger than... You can't do this justice in even 1,000-page book. That's not enough, actually. And when we were setting up like the outlines and stuff for this episode, we're like, oh, I actually can't talk about many things that I should talk about because I can't dedicate 2 hours to this one specific thing or the context needed. So this story, I was thinking about it. It reminds me of, you know how we think about like 300 now in Thermopylae? Like it's just like a straight up narrative. You get it now. You get the story. And you can get some more context and learn about like Marathon, and you can kind of get the whole story, but it'll take years, I think, for us as like a collective people to like polish this thing that happened and like figure out how to turn it into a digestible narrative. Because right now, even the show is all over the place, and the show is trying very hard to, and I think they're doing a commendable job of following like characters and like having it be narrative driven, but even they have to do jumping around, and you can tell when they're kind of pissed because they're skipping over stuff that they don't want to skip, and they're putting it in other people's mouths. And so I think it'll be a long time before they're able to really polish this out, like as like what's the narrative, what's the themes that we're supposed to get from the story.
I do think this is a rare thing to say, and I can only think of one other example, but I think that the show probably did a better job than the book.
I can see that.
As far as like we were talking about,
like not
this,
the CGI, but
not the CGI, but as far as the storytelling,
the storytelling is great.
The beginning and the end of Masters of the Air, the book, are meh.
Yeah.
The meat of the inside was great.
Yes.
There was parts where I was like, damn, this dude's a good writer, and there were other parts where I'm like, this dude's not that great of a writer. Yeah.
He doesn't know when to tie it off or how to tie it off. But we'll get to that. So we're now in September of 1944. Miller uses Kohler's return to show just how much has changed. Almost everyone and everything was new, including the planes. The rate of missions were so high that crews weren't baptizing their planes with art as often as before. Basically, what we're trying to say here is that by September 1944, it is a machine, right? Like these guys are coming, and guys that are getting back, they have no idea what they're getting back to. So Kohler is from a previous part that we've covered, Spencer's last part that he was covering, and he like comes back to the fleet, and he's like, what the fuck is going on here? And so it's just kind of crazy that these guys, they haven't been, it's the same war, and they're coming back, and everything's different now. Tactics also begin to change. The Luftwaffe were essentially dead because of the Mustangs. So Gallon created a volunteer storm group called Stormbach or Sturmgruppen. They were tank fighters that would break through bombers and then escape before the Mustangs could take them out. It reminds me of half of an anvil and hammer strategy, right? Anvil and hammer tactic, sorry, it's not a strategy. But the idea, right, you go in, some guy goes around and you hit hard. Alexander the Great, famous for doing it against the Persians. If the pilot didn't hit the bomber, he would ram it. And it took real bravery to do this. They were fighting to protect their home from the devastation of bombers. They also knew that losing this war was not going to be good for Germany. They were devastating in September. You need to appreciate the mentality. The Luftwaffe had been gone for multiple weeks, so much so that the bombers didn't have ball turret gunners anymore in some cases to hold more bombs. So in 6 minutes, 25 bombers were taken out in one storm group. So these storm groups, right, like these volunteer dudes and the Nazis would fly in, and they had to get so close before they could unleash their firing to get out the bombers. And if they didn't, they're like, shit, I'm just going to have to go right through them and hope that I make it out. And some of the guys made it out, which is even wilder.
It's nuts.
But that's very different mentality than like the kamikaze, which we talked about in Battle of Leyte Gulf, where they consign themselves to that. Where this one, it was, they consign themselves to that as a clause. If this is like a binary tree, right? Like, if this happens, then I will do it. Mm-hmm. And that takes like a lot of guts to have enough of your own like authority to where like, I don't have to do this. Yeah. Whereas when I read through some of the kamikaze letters, they're like, this is just how it has to happen in our country, and so this is how it works. Right? It was much more like resignment of defeat, whereas these guys are like, I have to hold on to hope.
Yeah.
The 8th changed tactics to deal with them by having Mustangs form in these like hunting parties, what they call them. To the Sturmgruppen's credit, they would not engage with Mustangs and try to get through to the bombers. So they would just ignore, while they're just getting freaking rammed by these Mustangs. They were just like, nope, we're going after the bombers. That's our goal. It was futile, and amazing pilots like Jaeger were able to do real damage. This guy Jaeger got 5 kills in one day, making him an ace in one day, which is kind of unheard of. And he wasn't even supposed to be flying that day. Like, there's just like all these like crazy stories. This is the end of the war, and like things are just wild. The changing of technology was a real hope and concern for all air forces in World War II. Everyone seemed to know that jet-powered planes were the future. Mm-hmm. Americans' versions wasn't fast enough, and other prospects were slow in production and design. This is that weird part of military stuff that, I don't know. It's hard for me as just like a civilian who reads like the romantic side of it, right? It doesn't go into all the battle tactic stuff till recently. It's so much about like, what is your production speed to get this prototype ready? Can it be mass produced? Is it fast enough? You know, like just like weird things that I wouldn't necessarily, I would just think, oh, that one's now jet powered. That's the better one. So put all your money in that one, make that one a thing. And they're like, there's an issue with the economics of it. Like, oh, yeah, that's going to stop you? That's weird.
Yeah, we can't just be pumping out jets.
Yeah.
We can't go to the jet store and get all of our jets.
Not yet. Now we can.
Now they grow on jet trees.
Yeah. Does Halliburton make jet trees?
Yeah. That's why you see jets all the time.
Boeing. Why did Boeing stop they stopped promoting their engineers?
So I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of Boeing stuff in the news and
talking to my father a lot about the Boeing.
I bet. I'm ignorant to all of it.
So Boeing, I'm just going to talk out of my ass here. I don't even know if you know history. Boeing was historic. They've always been like the golden egg of like planes and stuff, because supposedly they would always promote from within. So they'd always promote like their engineers, so that the engineers are always like, but this is how it has to be. Like we this is our margin because we have to have our quality. And then I think they got merged or bought another company, and now they have like regular CEOs, like fucking idiots. I think their CEO just stepped down.
Yeah, there's been a lot of shit like about Boeing that I'm not. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Okay, sorry. Jet-powered planes. The Germans had a good idea for one that ran on diesel, which is kind of crazy.
That is crazy.
So the Allies started to bomb their production to slow them down. This I get because in civilization they do this all the time, like bomb their factories to slow down their production of the things that I'm worried about.
Oh yes.
So this jet was called the Me-262, and it was stopped not by bombs, but by Hitler. Apparently Hitler wanted it to be a fighter bomber instead of just a fighter. Miller cautions us that Hitler's role in stopping the ME-262 is overblown, but I think it's pretty fun. So I'm going to just, in my head canon, this is how it happened.
Sure.
Hitler stopped it because he's like, I wanted to be a fighter. I wanted to be a bomber fighter.
Is that what he sounds like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
He sounds fun.
Hitler is on so much meth at this point, right? By the end of 1944.
It's like speed or something, dude.
Yeah.
Who knows? But he's fucked up. Like, you've seen the Olympics video, right?
Yeah.
He's just like...
He's wild.
Yeah, dude. Hitler's crazy.
And that's like technically unconfirmed, I guess, but it's pretty much confirmed.
I don't know.
In my mind, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. There's been a lot of listeners, if you haven't checked this out yet, go fucking bitch ass Joe Rogan made it popular. But I sent you this shit.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and type in Hitler speeches in English because AI is like producing these things in English, and it's fucking wild to listen to that shit in English.
And you just get put on a bunch of lists when you listen to it. What's that Dan Carlin bit before he starts his Mongol episodes? I have a book idea. Why don't you write a book about all the positives that came out of the Holocaust? I was like, what a fucking way to start a series. That's great.
It's going to be a short book, huh?
Well, he's like, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole, but you could do it. He was pointing out that people now talk about the Mongols like they united, China and everything. Whereas,
but
he's like, but you're looking at it from thousands of years, like 1,000
Right.
years in the future.
Got it.
There's a whole thing. Okay, let's move on. October 3rd, the jet fighter unit was operational. Kind of crazy. I didn't realize how much jet fighters kind of came in. It almost happened.
It's wild.
Like, there
I
were
know.
jets fighting.
We just don't think of that.
You don't think about it. You think
No.
of propellers.
Yeah.
You think of like your board games and your video games. It's all like propellers and it's
Totally.
all it. But that makes sense. Kind of fucking crazy. It was headed by a 258 kill count ace named Major Walter Nowotny. The Allies were scared, but inexperienced pilots and technical difficulties made this a small point in history. The Allied tactic was to hurt the jet when it was slow, and that was during takeoff and landing. November 8th contained the death of Walter Nowotny and the withdrawal of the unit. So basically, Germany had jet planes, and they were fighting. And alternative history me is like, there's some novels there to write about them having air superiority because of jets. Like, that's just kind of a wild thought.
Hitler didn't put all of his eggs in that basket, dude.
Nope.
Yeah.
And the only reason, and it makes sense, right? Like, taking off and landing with these things, new technology, like, that's when they're slowest. So
rough.
they just would get fucking wrecked.
Yeah,
on
we
that.
don't know how to do that yet. Taking off, great. Landing, don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Well, even taking off, they said taking off was slow enough where if they figured out where they were taking off from, that's where they'd go and hit.
Interesting.
Which, like, feels bad, because, like, we're Americans. Like, we do it with honor. Like, we actually just trying to get it done at this point.
Yeah. I'm just trying to...
And I don't necessarily blame anybody by the winter of 1944. Like, this war should be over.
Yeah, dude.
What the fuck? Like, I feel like everybody's like, it's not going to be over till when? May?
Yeah, well, that's why... That's the only reason that we look back on this and it's like, it makes sense that America's like, now if we're in this... We're in this,
right?
And we're killing some folks.
Yeah,
and we did, and it's icky to read about.
Still not on board with the Dresden thing, but we'll get there. Galland was not done though, and Galland, for those who don't remember, he is the Nazi. He's not a Nazi. He's the German leader of the Luftwaffe.
Yeah,
and
like the
Air
Luftwaffe
Force.
commander.
But he never joined the Nazi party, which for me is significant. If you're that high up and never joined, I don't know all the specifics of politics.
Commendable.
Yeah, but like. It's not a point against you, that's for sure.
No, for sure, yeah.
Joining the Nazi party, big point against you.
Yep. Anti-Nazi.
I had like a really original thought the other day. I was watching some war thing, and I was like, I really think I'm against war. I think I'm against killing. Like, fundamentally.
Dude.
And then I thought to myself, you're so brave.
Yeah.
You're such a brave person.
Hot take. Fuck. Same. I was
because
watching.
like you just have these moments,
Dude,
right? You're going through all this shit all the
bro.
time. Like we're going through all this content all the time, and sometimes it hits me emotionally.
It
Like
weighs on you.
I'm very much against us killing each other,
especially if you have kids.
Yes,
Yeah. Wait, the other night I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna turn on a relaxing documentary," and it's the new one on Netflix about the Cold War. It's awful.
Yeah,
Like it's good, but it's fucking depressing.
the Cold War's a whole beast.
So I was like, yeah, I guess anti-war.
Very anti-war.
Very, very anti-war. But makes for great podcast content.
Yeah. Well, I want to know it. I want to understand it. Going the shit with open eyes, you know?
Yeah, and open butts.
I thought you were going to say open dicks. I was like, gross. You're going to do sounding?
No, man.
That's
Open
called?
butts.
He had been amassing a fleet of 2,500 spear fighters for what he had called the De Grootschlag. It's called the Great Blow. How was that? Is that pretty good?
Yeah, it was,
Really good.
felt like I was in Germany.
In his grim calculus, he wanted to trade 500 spear fighters for 500 bombers in a single battle. Galen shows how formidable he really was as an adversary. His belief was that the Allies would have to switch from oil targets to aircraft factories, which would then give the Wehrmacht could focus on the Russian front.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really solid plan, right? So again, I'll repeat that. His plan was, I'm going to get all these young guys, all these pilots, because he keeps losing all of his aces, and I'm going to trade, and I'm going to trade hard. This is called tempoing in chess, right? Or tempoing, if you play like a lot of board games or video games, trade 1-for-1 for a positional advantage later on. It's grim. It's grim to do that with lives. But tempoing is like a thing. Like I think tempoing is one of the best strategies you can do in gaming.
Legit strategy.
Yeah. And the idea was then he's not helping himself. He's helping the Russian front, which is like suddenly like in the winter of 44, it's starting to look bad, right? They're getting ready for the spring offensive against them is going to be fucking brutal. And Galen sees the writing on the wall. I think it shows like he understood a lot, and he doesn't have that big of an ego if he's willing to like sacrifice his fleet for the greater German victory potential. Like, Jesus.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I just don't know. Why did so Russia is an ally.
The Soviet Union is an ally.
Okay.
Yes.
Why did the United States not go there to help? Or did we?
Why didn't we go to the Eastern Front?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I think part of it has to probably do with the fact that the Soviet Union was originally with Germany.
Okay.
And then when Hitler like came back on the deal of dividing up Czechoslovakia, I think is who they divided up, and then they're like, yeah, you'll get half of it, and then they took over all of it, and then the Soviet Union's like, fuck you.
It just, as an American, even to this day, it's like, wait, the Soviets were allies?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I have to tell it every day when I go over Holocaust stuff with my kids. They're like, but that's Russia. I'm like, yeah. And like, there is weird shit already. Like, a lot of weird documents are like, but our next enemy is them.
Like, I feel like interchangeably, our minds as Americans are just like, no. Italy was the allies and Soviet Union was the Axis. And it's like, are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. It's just weird.
Weird.
I need to learn more about that.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The answer that pops into my head, but I don't have any references in my head, is that they were like, well, you guys started against us, like fucking figure it out.
I mean, I'll take that answer.
I think also part of it is like, because we read earlier in Miller's book where he would talk about pilots having to crash, like emergency land in Soviet Union, and it being miserably hard, like to get out and to get resupplied. So I imagine part of it's just like the logistics are a nightmare over here.
Russia's like a place where you go to die. Truly.
Well, in that part, right, like the very western part,
it's rough, dude.
They're connected to the steppe, man.
It always comes back to the fucking steppe.
Dude, the steppe. Okay.
Do you want to start a band?
Stop it. It's scary to think about how successful such an idea would have been, but fortunately, it was not to be. Most of the planes were moved to support the Western Front in a way that they were not prepared for. And then what happened to Galen? It is interesting enough to quote Miller in his entirety here. The transfer of his pilots was Adolf Galen's last official duty as commander of the fighter arm. Having fallen out of favor with both Göring and the Führer, he would take no part in the coming operation. That December, his phones were tapped, SS spies were placed on his staff as clerical help, and his political past was investigated, for he had never joined the Nazi Party. At the end of the month, Göring called him into the headquarters and in a 2-hour monologue accused him of devising ill-advised tactics, of failing to obey orders, and of setting up a private dynasty in the fighter arm. So ended the great threat to the 8th Air Force.
And that's that.
It's just over now.
Bye.
He was, and when I'm reading through the history, like, he's the scariest motherfucker to us, because like he has way less of an ego than like Patton with like his shiny guns and shit, right? Like, this guy's like, if I just take out my own men, I could help another part of the country. Like, okay, don't be against me.
Yeah, so this is an interesting part in the book, Kevin, because it's very much like, and it's gone.
And then
then it's gone.
And he's gone. He lost all of his, and also, God damn it, being in a government position and having a 2-hour long like bitch fest at
monologue. Yeah, this dude starts monologuing for 2 goddamn hours. And you're like, fuck, dude.
I'm 34 now, and I definitely walk out of rooms if I feel like I'm getting talked to for too
100%.
long. Like, I'm like, I actually don't need this anymore.
I'm good.
Like, I'm not against you, but I'm against what's happening, and then I walk out. Or put my headphones in.
I have I have examples I'm thinking of where that's happened recently in my life.
You're just like, oh, actually, like, this isn't how we talk to each other.
Yeah.
Like, in meetings, like IEP meetings, you're like, this isn't productive anymore.
Yeah, bye. For sure.
All right, let's backtrack. Any final thoughts on Galland? What's your take on Galland? You kind of have the same read as me?
Pro.
Yeah.
Cool dude. Anti-Nazi. I think, Galland was good. It sucks that he was just a part of, like, shitty politics.
Yeah. It seemed like he was a good military mind.
100%.
And so why I'm giving him credit for not joining the Nazi Party is that was a huge strike against him.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, if you didn't join, there had to, if that big of an officer, Spencer and I have had this conversation a couple times about Galland. I feel like it has to have been a personal reason. Like, I don't know. I would be interested to learn more.
I would be very interested in reading a book about him.
Yeah, Galland.
At some point. Yeah, he's really cool.
Going back to September, Eisenhower, who's known for his speed, moved so fast that he outran his own supply line. Which, man, if I had to support that dude, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
Do people love Eisenhower when you're in the military? Was everyone talking like
Ike?
Yeah.
I mean,
as a president, I think I might like him more than as a general. Is that weird?
No, I'm
not against him. The idea of moving so fast, you move past your supply line, like in a modern war, like what the fuck are you doing?
I mean, isn't the thing that we attribute to him is like the military-industrial complex? Like that's his little that's like right. So I think a lot of people,
but his presidency isn't that bad because he listened to a lot of people.
Yeah,
which
that's hard.
That's
hard
good.
To do as president.
I'm cool with that. If my president's like, what do you think?
For sure.
Cool, man.
Because that's how it should be.
That seems like how checks and balances work. That's just me.
The best generals. The best generals.
Okay. So instead of trying to clear the line in Antwerp, Eisenhower wanted to land paratroopers in Holland behind the Siegfried line.
Yeah.
Okay. Miller is going to start detouring here so hard, and he never totally gets back for the rest of the book. He's going to start combining like infantry tactics and political tactics, and it gets confusing, guys. We're gonna try to just give you the highlights, give you the hits as we go through this part.
All the hits, all the favorites,
because this part's hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to read through all like a couple hundred pages of this.
You betcha.
And you're like, this is how much, and because I'm thinking about like, well, if I wanted to supply context for this line that he just randomly threw out, I'm going to need to read a whole extra book on like...
he needed to condense.
Yeah. And that's not... Miller, you did a tremendous work, and you brought this story to the forefront. Like, that's cool.
Thanks for listening, Miller.
He's a big fan of us. He's written us letters.
Yeah.
So he wanted to get behind the Siegfried line. That didn't work. A bunch of guys died, and then Eisenhower tried to break the Siegfried line. It ended in 1944 with a stalemate. Spatz, working with the Combined Strategic Targets Committee, pushed forward with oil strikes. There is some political infighting that is interesting, but would make us deviate too far from the story. What is important is Miller's reminder that strategic bombing is more faith than fact.
Yeah.
And even though they were going to target oil factories, transportation targets split the focus. a lot of the focus was around the Ruhr, like that, the rural, R-U-A-R-H. R-U-H-R.
R-U-H-R, the Ruhr?
The Ruhr. The
Ruhr?
rural Ruhr. Sorry. I had speech therapy for my R's, okay?
Repatriation. We're good.
It's the hard R's.
Ruhr.
They used to have to feed me little cookies before I would say girl in speech therapy.
Because you were like, go.
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 Say it again. I don't want to say it again. You just made fun of me. I could see it in your eyes.
Go.
Go. I would say go. And
Go.
they're like, you got to say it again the right way. I'm like, I fucking hate you. I know they're watching a movie in kindergarten right now.
Ruhr.
The rural juror. All right. That there is like a lot in that section that I just condensed right there. There is a lot of interesting political infighting between a lot of different allies. But basically, they're trying to hit oils. We're going to once again judge a winning operation. Remember, our current metric is to judge the plan, not the outcome. We talked about that a couple parts ago. I think on my last part that I was spearheading. American bombing strategy was based on the American economy, not Germany's. Therefore, they didn't realize that hitting freight transporting coal would be as devastating as those synthetic oil factories. Just how lucky were we during this war? Even the dude who pushed the railroad plan, this guy named Tedder, didn't understand the connection. Miller summarizes this well when he states, while oil was essential to the Nazi war machine, coal was even more important. Deprived of it, the entire German economy would collapse. Bad weather and good fortune thus conjoined to produce a devastating assault on Germany's most essential economy. And I personally love this line from Miller. Bad weather and good fortune conjoined. Basically here, we had the wrong plan. We didn't know how devastating this was going to be. We didn't know what targets to pick. We picked the wrong targets. We are basing all of our strategy on our own economy, which is so
Stupid.
fucking dumb.
Dumb, yeah.
It seems so obvious to us. Like, I would never think of that, but maybe because I'm an English teacher and the whole point of my job is to teach kids to like look at other people's perspectives. But what the fuck?
Yeah. Miller goes into a really long diatribe about how this shit didn't work.
Yeah.
The strategic bombing is stupid.
And the faith-based bombing, like, I'm glad Miller is brutal about that, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
That we had no idea of what we were hitting.
No.
If it worked out, why should we care about judging this? To me, this highlights how lucky we got. The lesson here is our lack of seeing our enemy through our enemy's eyes. We were looking at them as a mirror of ourselves, which almost cost us a longer war and more lives. That's the part to me that like really resonated. Like, this lack of willingness to see somebody else's perspective was literally costing us lives. That bothers me. Like, get over your ego and pride a little bit if it's costing people lives. Like, what the fuck?
I think the part that hurts the most is it still didn't attribute to any learned behaviors in the future of warfare.
Yeah.
People weren't like, oh, remember that one time when we did strategic bombing and it was stupid? And they're like, Operation Rolling Thunder is in full effect.
It makes me judge, though, the Hearts and Mind campaign of Iraq more favorably.
Interesting.
Because it shows an attempt from our military to understand its opposition. Fascinating. Even though the outcome wasn't exactly what we wanted, the strategy was more sound. This is just my personal...
Yeah. It's
a
Kevinism.
Yeah, like when we would study the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, they did try to understand the opposition and how to like deconstruct the violent tendencies, maybe more in Iraq than Afghanistan, definitely more Iraq than Afghanistan, but we did try to do like a battle of hearts and minds. 100%. And like soldiers were pissed about it and were like, this is really dumb and it's not working, which is probably valid. But I appreciate that they are at least trying to like, what's their motivation and what's their worldview before we go into the straight bombing as we think bombing works.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really drop. I mean, there was obviously bombs were dropped, but not to the extent of
and it wasn't based on our economic lines.
No.
Like, oh, if we lost this much oil, we would be pissed. Like, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm I guess I'm defending a part of the Iraq war. This feels weird. I'm going to move on.
Well, yeah. I think you're defending intentions.
Yeah, I am. I'm defending strategy and growing.
Yeah.
America's growing. By November, the waterway of that area in Germany, Miller explained the effectiveness was from the frequency and the weight of the attacks, not the accuracy. And that was the most telling. The German leader Speer said to Hitler that the outcome of the battle will determine the fate of the Reich. So basically, it's all or nothing right now. And they knew that in 1944. So fuck Nazis for not surrendering earlier. The bombs were mainly delivered through blind bombing using the H-2X radar that we talked about a couple of parts ago. The Air Force calculated that only 2% of the bombs dropped in a typical radar attack hit within 1,000 feet of the aiming point. Why is that a big deal? Well, these were not factories hidden out in the woods. These are transportation hubs located in the middle of cities. The civilian casualties were enormous. Some pilots, as we've talked about earlier, were unaffected. But a lot did struggle with the guilt of killing people, specifically civilians. They hated the Nazi leaders, not the pilots and civilians. General Marshall cleared them to bomb any town if they couldn't find their target because they must have something of military value. Which that didn't sit well with pilots in the long run of this idea of just drop them on any city because they have to have something of military value. We know Germany wasn't really operating like that.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Berlin was pointless to bomb. Genuinely.
Because it's not like Japan at this time where they were building aircraft in the backyards of people's houses.
Right.
Because there is a case, whether right, like not saying right or wrong, but there is a case for there is military value in bombing these suburbs. It's fucked up.
You're talking about in Japan?
Yeah, in Japan at this time.
It was just so much smaller, like
Well,
such a more compact community.
And they were so disciplined. We talked about the Let It Go, like they could just build airplanes.
Yeah.
Like I could give you the job of making the side mirror, and then you would just build the side mirrors for me in your backyard. And this is late World War II Japan, but like there is a conversation to be had about like, is that a military target now?
Right.
Whereas in Germany, I think a lot of these are like the pilots are smart enough to be like, this isn't a military target.
Yeah, why
like,
are we dropping bombs on Berlin? What are we doing here? Especially if you got guys who are like, oh, that's where Beethoven was. Man.
Hey, I like that Navigator.
It was fun. No, it was cool. I'm just saying, like, that's the type of...
Isn't that what a Nazi says? A Nazi says that at the end, like, I can't believe they bombed where this artist that I've never heard of was from.
Yes.
Like, also, visual arts, like paintings, like really piss me off.
Interesting.
They're too hard to see. I'm not allowed in the museums and like it's like
I see.
Music. I can just listen to.
Yeah.
Anybody's music.
Seeking out art is a whole thing.
I can listen. I have so many playlists of classical and jazz, and it's awesome.
How many playlists of art do you have?
I can't even get high res pictures of them half the time.
Yeah.
Like, what does this one look like? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Where's my education on that? I don't know.
Mona Lisa, you can get a high res one of that, I'm sure.
That'd be cool. I
Right.
guess. My history teacher in 7th grade said, Mona Lisa, go look at some other art.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about the Mona Lisa.
He's like, it's a small painting. It's all right.
Oh, it's literally small, interesting.
He's like, it's like a normal. He's like, you go to that museum and there's like walls covered in art. Yeah. All right. Anyway, Battle of the Bulge. Woo! Hitler made an ill-advised and terrifying plan. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, that's not how you say his name, issued a pretty epic speech the morning of the mission, which I want to quote here. Soldiers of the Western Front, your great honor has struck. Everything is at stake. Man, if someone said that to me in the morning, like after I had my coffee, and like, you're doing battle right now, I'm like, oh, that's good. Got a little chill. World War II German ideology may have been some of the dumbest shit in the world, but you can't deny that German rhetoric is fucking fantastic after the infusion of 18th century philosophy. And I have here a note for myself. I'm glad I wrote this because I know myself well. Possible nerdy vamping, which means that I could... This is where I was going to talk about Hegel and talk about like 18th century philosophers. I'm not going to anymore, but I wrote that for myself as a note.
I mean, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Oh, dialectics are great. People love them.
Yeah, you had to teach me. I don't know.
Woo! No.
Okay.
What was the gamble? Fog, night, and snow mixed with surprise. Bad weather and gasoline. Why did it work? Well, and this is a point where we have now repeated a few times this series, the Allies had the intelligence, but they simply did not believe it because they're stuck in their own fucking viewpoint.
Oh.
They thought the buildup of troops was just to secure their own supply lines because that is what the Allies would want to do.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about current global trends toward inclusion and empathy, right? This idea of like woke and snowflake shit. But we have multiple times in our recent military history of Americans dying because we failed to see the other side as anything other than a reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
The bad weather grounded planes. The only thing that saved us was the Allies being stubborn-ass fools who slowed down the Germans until they basically ran out of fuel. This let Eisenhower do his thing. He moved 250,000 men to the front. When the skies cleared, 20,000 men of the 8th took their bombers and crushed the German tanks. That December also marked the practical end of the Luftwaffe. By the end of January, the Germans were back to the Siegfried Line. The Battle of the Bulge is remembered so fondly, in my mind anyway, because it was largely an American versus a German fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I skipped over tons of the Battle of the Bulge because that's its own series, which I would love to cover.
Yeah, of course.
That's iconic.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of fucked up to think like the only reason why we won is because of our stubbornness. And like, I'm glad, like I love American stubbornness in the face of like adversity. Like I think it's a great thing. It's not my favorite American trait. We're going to say that at the very end. I have a favorite American trait.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. My favorite non-toxic American trait.
American stubbornness. This is
So is that your... How do you feel about that as a...
American?
No, a take on like the Battle of the Bulge and that it was bad.
You mean because we were just going about it in the way that of just looking at ourselves and how we would operate things?
Are you seeing that as similar thing?
Well, I think it goes into the same thing that you were talking about where you're like, oh, like, and I don't remember where, I mean, probably from the fucking book, but luck seems to be a massive trait
like
here.
Just hoping that we're hard as nails the whole time.
Yeah, but it's hard for me to say that because we've won so many things that saying luck feels
well, that's Napoleon's thing.
Yeah,
he wanted lucky generals,
and he got them. Yeah, I don't know, man. It just makes me feel like I'm diminishing.
Right. Well, that's how I felt. Like I was like, oh, am I being dismissive,
reductive?
Right.
Sure. And that's what it feels that way.
Because what did that general say? I think like they get surrounded in the winter, the infantry, and they get told to surrender, and he sends back nuts. Like,
wait, what are you talking about?
The Americans.
Bulge?
I think it was Battle of the Bulge, one of the winter battles. They get like hunkered down, and it became a joke. Like the Germans like send like a thing for surrender. And he's like, sure, I'll take their surrender. And they're like, no, they're telling you to surrender. And then he says, nuts. And so like all the enlisted guys, like for the rest of the winter, they would all just say nuts together. Cause,
they had a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a 1940 teamer thing.
Yeah. I'm definitely the portion of the Battle of the Bulge did make me genuinely excited for digging deeper into that.
Yes, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But could it have been less people dying?
Yeah.
Like, could we have seen... Like, did we have real intelligence that, like, they were building up troops and we were just like, they're obviously just reinforcing supply lines, even though...
It's hard to say.
That's crazy.
It's hard to say.
So, let's go on to... We're just going to kind of start jumping around a little bit. This stuff gets a little funny. I like it, though, because it tells you a little bit about, like, the mentality of these guys that are having to jump out of fucking planes because their planes are going down and shit. So Lieutenant Louis Lovetsky, 24-year-old navigator, is shot down over Berlin. And he's quoted as saying, "Even before I pulled the ripcord, it occurred to me that I risked being shot by the Gestapo or the SS if I kept my dog tags, which were marked with an H for Hebrew, to ensure that I received a proper burial. I also knew that if I ripped them off and threw them away, I risked being shot as a spy. Since our military briefings had not covered these minor details, I decided to risk being shot as a Jew."
I would have like been like, they're like, what is the H for? I'm like, I'm a hedonist.
Yeah.
I really like pleasure. Hedonism. I don't know.
That's pretty good.
Okay. What would you have said the H stood for instead of Hebrew?
hot dogs.
There you go.
Big fan of American hot dogs and baseball.
Have you guys been to Costco?
Take my wife there on a date every weekend. So pretty wild, right? Like these small details of like not having these things planned out, and then you totally become realized of them as you're falling out of an airplane. Like I have those moments teaching, not to that level, but all the time. Like, oh shit, I didn't plan for this contingency. That's very obvious now that it's staring me in the face.
Right.
What do I do when the kid tells me to fuck off? Like, oh man, why I didn't plan for this.
You see that one kind of real curveball.
It gets funnier though. Let's see. Here I was free falling over Berlin, and I was thinking to myself, holy shit, when my parents open that Air Force footlocker, they'll think, what kind of sex fiend did he raise?
Oh, yeah, I remember that part.
Because he had a bunch of condoms.
Yeah.
Because he was told, like, you might get some action in the city. So then he just bought a bunch of condoms because he wasn't sure what to do.
Right.
And he was really worried about his parents finding all his condoms.
Yep. I remember that.
He actually gets captured later on, and then he's relieved when he finds like another guy who's like, don't worry, I cleaned out your locker. That's such a bro move. Like, your parents don't need to see this part
I
of your
saw
life.
all the condoms, dude. I just dispersed them accordingly.
All right. Now to a little more darker side, a little complicated. Soldiers are being beaten and killed by German civilians. This is shown in the Masters of the Air stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're being labeled as Kinderkillers, child killers, or Terrorflingers, terror flyers. The difference between infantry capture and airmen is that the airmen are captured alone. Some of it is true, and some of it is propaganda. The propaganda is pretty good, involving Chicago gangs and such. This is also the time that Germany started rejecting the Geneva Convention like Russia was rejecting. Kind of summarize a little bit of this. Shit gets weird, but like it's bad for these parachuters, because usually, so like in World War II, the Western Front is following the Geneva Convention, and there are cases of like thousands of men being captured in one time. And so they just get captured together, and they go with their commander, whoever's the commander at the time, and then they go to the prison, and that commander's still in charge of them. And it kind of, there's fucked up shit, all that kind of stuff, sure. But they're with their buddies, and that kind of is how it happens. These guys are falling out of airplanes. Some of their buddies die. Sometimes they usually are alone, because wins are wins. And it's terrifying for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the civilians are not happy. And there's a lot of propaganda from the Germans saying that these American flyers are like part of the Chicago gangland, and that they are being hired because they're gangland members. And there's just like all this crazy shit going on where these civilians are pissed about their kids being killed, which,
right.
You know, I was talking to my wife about it, and she was like, well, I could never have, you know, I could never punish the person like that. I was like, what if you're pulling our kid out of that rubble? And she's like, well, okay, well then maybe I'm the one that
changes things, doesn't it? Yeah.
Changed it really fast in her mind. Like, it went from an absolute no to like, I'm not going to tell you how I feel about this. Yeah,
perhaps.
And then rejecting the Geneva Convention, for context, for those that don't know, Russia and Germany, I think, Soviet Union and Germany, I think, did not follow the Geneva Convention together. The Geneva Convention, I think, was in 1929-ish.
Okay.
But we signed it with Germany. So, like, there are people that did sign it and people that didn't sign it. And when you didn't sign it, you get the fucking Ostfront of the Eastern Front of German Russia, which is
just horror.
The worst.
Yeah.
Looking for a joke still in that area to talk about.
Can't find one.
Brief side story, because I teach the Nuremberg trials and want to do a series on it in the future. Miller talks about how some SS officers refused the orders to execute captured prisoners by using delay tactics. They weren't that successful, and it's possible that they are retconning some of their history, but it does show how in 1945, the very beginnings of it, Germans and Nazis were thinking about their post-war punishments. Miller maintains that the main reason was to protect the Luftwaffe flyers, meaning that if I don't kill your pilots, you won't kill my pilots, which is a solid Geneva Convention strategy. Like, honestly, some of the better world, human, global politics stuff that we've done. Like, hey, you don't kill my pilot, I won't kill your pilot.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
I agree.
Okay, so Miller maintains that the main reason was to protect the Luftwaffe flyers, but I might disagree with him to at least a point. Some of the civilians were put to trial for their crimes against the flyers and at the court of Dartmouth. So some of these civilians are eventually put to trial and put to death for killing pilots and stuff, which is kind of crazy thinking about them backtracking and figuring out, like, did Billy Bob fucking kill a pilot one day? Like,
right.
that's crazy to me that they could look back even a couple months and figure out, like, what the hell happened here.
Yeah. It's also wild that you are condemning some, like, it seems borderline hypocritical. Like, how dare you kill our pilots? We're going to kill you now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The whole thing's fucked. Another quick side story. One of the most famous German interrogators was Hans Scharf. Scarf? How do you say his name? I'm not going to cut this. This is great. Scharf. Germans. How can their language be so close to us and so hard for me to understand? A student asked me today what sigh meant, and I looked it up. It's a German word. It means to pour out.
Like, to sigh?
She's like, where does that word absolutely come
like
from?
That?
Yeah, so we looked up in the OED together.
It's German, huh?
So it's a German. They think it might be like Indo something.
To pour out.
To pour out.
I
like that.
Like a sigh of relief.
Oh my God. And then it was her and a couple other, like, my athlete kids, and I was showing them my Oxford English Dictionary, and they're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, great.
And I was like, this is a dictionary. And they're like, how do you know where the words are? That's what they said. The words are they're in alphabetical order. It's a dictionary.
I want off this planet.
Oh, that's great. Okay. This guy's actually, like, I've read about him many times because I find him fascinating. He pioneered the most effective method for interrogation, being kind to each other. That's right, the Nazis figured out the humane way to interrogate people, and we just collectively forgot it after 9/11 when those two dum-dums told us to torture people. Those are two dum-dum...
That would be Bush?
No, the two dum-dums from the Air Force that told us from their family therapy doctorate that we should do enhanced interrogations.
Oh, that really?
Yeah. Those guys are fucked up. Hate those guys. Go watch the Adam Driver movie, The Report. The Report's really good.
I will go watch that.
For accuracy, many of the interrogations against the airmen were not humane. I am simply saying that after the war, we mined everything we could from the Nazis and realized how effective Hans was after the war. Go look up Operation Paperclip and have fun crying down the rabbit hole. So, like, we hired him. I didn't know that. I studied a lot of this guy, but I didn't realize, like, after the war, we're like, this dude's pretty cool.
He's ours now.
So we hired him. He taught us how to do good interrogations of, like, just get to know the guy, hearts and minds stuff, show him how much information you have, right? All the things that, like, really, they work with students, right? If I go show to my student, like, I already talked to your mom. I know that you have a baseball game today, right? Like, I show that, like, I have this authority and I'm interested, like, and I know you want to do well on it. Well, this guy cares about me, knows me. That's good strategy for having leverage. And then we fucking forgot it all after 2001.
Yeah, dude. The final dossier maneuver. You're putting some information forth that you already know to make people trust you. Like, oh, you already fucking know.
Yeah, you already know.
It's great.
And they did know a lot. I can't believe how much the Nazis knew.
For sure.
What did Miller say? It was something like, no communication was too insignificant for them to analyze to, like, the nth degree. So whether it was like a ration card conversation on a plane that they intercepted, they would just study all of it. They knew all of the, like, stamp prints of ration cards to know, like, how long this guy was at what base. Kind of wild.
Hey, man. Germans are smart.
They are smart.
They really are.
And dumb.
They're very dumb.
Phrenology is the study of being dumb.
What'd you call it? Fuck. It was.
Did I call it phenology?
No. Fucking. You called it when people study the stars. Race astrology.
Yeah, race astrology. It is.
It is. It's funny.
Okay. We're going to skip over a lot of POW stuff. So obviously this chapter was setting up for a lot of POW stuff. We're going to skip it. This is not because I think it is not important, but because I think the contrary. There are true POW narratives that deserve to have their full story told, and we simply don't have the space in this series to cover it. One thing, however, touches too many of our interests to pass. That is when Brigadier General Arthur W. Vonneman was captured flying over Berlin. He had far too much clearance to be put in such a risk, and he used mind control techniques to erase all knowledge of MK Ultra from his mind by taping his mouth shut at night and using mind control techniques. And then he's quoted as saying after, "It's funny what a man can do with his mind." So if you don't know Spencer and I personally, we love Last Podcast on Left, and I've gone down the MK Ultra rabbit hole like
It's fun.
2 or 3 times now.
Yeah.
It's wild. And just knowing that this guy like had secrets and then used his secrets to get rid of his secrets is very like, oh.
The taping of the mouth shut's really interesting.
So when he landed, he had no business being in the air. Like he had ultra secrets. He had all of our classified secrets. And he hurt his back, so they taped his back up. And then he'd rip off little pieces of the tape and tape his mouth shut. And then supposedly he could then erase thoughts from his mind.
I mean, that's just really interesting because that's what people are like. That's a thing people are doing now to be like healthy during sleep. Is they're taping their mouth shut.
What?
Yeah. Because like,
Because of spiders?
No, I'm gonna butcher this, but breathing through your mouth is fucking horrible for you, bro.
What?
Breathing through your mouth causes more cavities than sugar.
No.
Swear to God, bro. Swear to God, it's the whole thing. Yeah, so like people now, like it's like a fad, like tape your mouth shut while you sleep. Like breathing through your nose.
But do most people have 2 nostrils at work? I only ever have 1. I have like my nostril that's a normal nostril and the other one that's just like a clogged mess.
But that's, I think, common. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm supposed to do all my breathing out of 1 nostril?
Well, you're fucked. I don't know what you're supposed
It's
to
going
do.
to get some cavities.
I mean, but also, don't you do the whole neti pot bullshit?
Yeah. It only helps for a couple minutes.
Cool. Maybe you should take some Claritin, bud.
I was against allergy medicine this year. I don't know if you remember that. We've had that talk. It was like 8 years of allergy medicine nonstop every day.
Oh,
and I was like, maybe I should give my kidneys and liver a break.
Yes, yeah.
But after our doubleheader, my eye got swollen and blistered.
Really?
Yeah.
Claritin. Time for Claritin.
So I was
bud.
like, oh, it turns out I'm taking Allertech
yeah,
this year.
yeah.
Also, fuck Vacaville a little bit with these trees.
Yeah, fuck you, Vacaville.
I love
Your
you, Vacaville.
trees.
All right, that's what I got. It's now Spencer's turn to wow us.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. We're a podcast called Battle Buddies from Solano County. Have you heard of barbed wire disease? The fuck?
Barbed wire disease.
Yeah, dude, barbed wire disease. This was like one of the things that they were talking about, literally being surrounded by barbed wire for so long that you go fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And you like start talking to trees and shit. Barbed wire disease. That was a fun one. Dude, how about the fucking thing where POWs were getting college credits and shit?
I love that.
That was dope as fuck, dude. So,
They're really working through their issues.
these fucking...
They're learning Latin.
Yeah, dude, these POWs were getting like college courses, and like it's just interesting because we're sitting here learning about how fucked up POW camps were, and it was like, but these guys got their fucking doctorates and shit. And you're like, what?
And I always find it interesting in prison literature, POW literature, it's all the same. As soon as you start taking away everything, theater just comes back.
That was
fucking
another
huge.
thing I was gonna say.
It's just about theater at the end of the
So,
day.
Yeah, they start doing plays, bro.
Like immediately.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there wondering, like, how long until like my bro buddies start doing Hamlet with me?
The sun will come out
Yeah, like-
tomorrow.
There's that new A24 movie about theater plays in prison that looks really fucking good.
Is it like a comedy?
No, it's deadly serious, and I
Oh.
cannot wait for it.
I will watch the shit out of that.
It looks really, really good.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that's fucking dope. So anyway, these notes are just all over the goddamn place, much like his book towards the end.
He drifts.
Yeah, dude. So fucking like the YMCA, shout out to the YMCA. Next time you hear that song, remember that the YMCA was the one providing all these legit textbooks and source material
They
for
were.
these fucking college classes in POW camps. I think it's wild. We're talking about the fucking Geneva Convention.
Yep.
Under like the Geneva Convention, when you're in a POW camp, your rank matters, and you still get mail and are treated somewhat like a person.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
You still get the sawdust
when you're not in
bread.
fucking Switzerland.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so that was some of the main things. I gotta say, so one of the things I was really excited to talk to you about, as far as like a contradiction that it was really confusing for me, was so towards the end of the book, listeners, Donald Miller, the author, goes on a long diatribe about how strategic bombing was stupid. Right?
Right.
Strategic bombing was fucking not really as successful as we wanted to say that it was.
The propaganda machine was like, this is working.
Yeah. That being said, though, there's a part in the book where we are doing strategic bombing and then literally like completely destroy the Luftwaffe.
Right.
So it was like things did work
Yeah.
from bombing. Like things happened. So my question is like, bro, you wrote a whole book about bombing, like, and you were saying all these things that like definitely determined outcomes of the war.
Right.
But then you're at the end like, this was really stupid and it didn't do anything and it was pointless. And it was like, but it wasn't though. Like it did do some things.
Yes.
Some things came of it. Germany was fucked, but that was one of his arguments was like, it was still like, it only slightly halted Germany. Like
Right.
Germany was able to like be pretty resilient from the bombings.
Until we hit the oil and the transportation rails.
And then D-Day, hell fucked them up.
Yeah.
When we were bombing, I forget what operation that was, but we started bombing all these like different openings to help with D-Day, and that was apparently...
We hit our own guys a couple times.
Hit our own guy. We buddy fucked ourselves for sure. So that was just kind of like weird for me to read, where he was like, this is all hella dumb, but it was like, he definitely also made sure to put in all the things that were successful in the book.
Right. But I appreciated that, because to me that speaks to the critique the plan, not like the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome was we got fucking lucky in my mind.
Okay.
Because if he's saying, if his data, if his like his analysis is correct, we could have missed by 1,000 feet the other way,
Right.
and then we would have missed everything.
Right.
And so, like, did we just get overly fucking lucky, or I don't know?
Perhaps a mixture of both, right? Let's see. I wrote down questions a while ago for our battle buddies. Yeah, here we go, right? So questions that I want us to think about after reading Masters of the Air, and questions that I want us to start inserting into all the battles that we cover. But like, what about this story makes America America?
I have the answer to that one.
Send it.
Okay. Let me go to my little... I prepared this part. And we didn't even plan these questions.
Isn't that great? You just seen it live here at Battle Buddies.
All right. So skipping over some POW stuff. This is about one of the POW camps being liberated. Moose Drool. No, that's a beer. Moose something. Mooseburg.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is 1945. And these men are like, they just got put on this fucking march, which was hard not to put into our outline because it's brutal.
Yeah.
And they get thrown in these cattle cars and people are dying, and they think thousands, hundreds, thousands may have died. We'll never know. But like I was saying, it deserves its own series. But when one of these camps, the Mooseburg, was liberated, a captain got out of his tank. The captain burst through. It's even better than that. I'm going to back it up. Let's paint this picture correctly. They know, the POW soldiers know there's a battle going on, however many feet away.
Yeah.
And they see an American flag, and they all freak out, and they all stand there. They're all starving, and they stand there just saluting it. And they're like, I haven't seen the red, white, and blue in 18 months.
Yeah.
And they're having great quotes like that. While they're saluting the flag, a tank bursts through the front gates, and they all jump. They're like, holy shit, it's an American tank. And they run over to the tank. And this guy comes out and he's like, I'm here for my brother. And his brother is in that camp.
That's dope.
And then this other guy comes out of a tank and says, I'm here for my son.
Nice.
And his son is a lieutenant who's in the camp.
Oh, shit.
And that is the non-toxic American culture that I will never fucking get sick of like,
Okay.
my brother's over there, so I'm going over there, and then I'm going to go get him.
Okay.
And then you do it because, like, that's
America.
That's the America culture.
Okay,
Like, fuck
okay.
yeah.
So, okay. I love it. Conversely, what about the story makes Germany Germany? Let's not say that. That's not fair. What about what about this story makes the enemy the enemy?
For me, in this story, it's Galland. It's Galland not making, like, that many missteps until asymmetrical power systems, which is, like, fucking dictators and shit, which is why I'll never get on board, even if Obama, who I love, was like, I'm actually willing to be a dictator. But I don't fucking want it because
I've read a lot of Dune.
I've read a lot of Dune, and it's
Yeah.
literally Dune who's opened my eyes to, like, asymmetrical power structures. They're
Dope.
fucking dumb.
Dope.
And Galland, in my mind, is like the formidable enemy. He's Yamamoto from Japan. You know, like he's the fucking guy. And the fact that, like, he is destroyed from a plan that is pretty reasonable because of, like, this meth addict who is like unhinged and then has to listen to a 2-hour lecture about why he didn't join the Nazi party, and then
that
it's just
alone.
dismissed. Like, and he tried. He's like, I didn't even tell the rest of his story because he was like, when he got dismissed, he begged and he said, "Can you just put me back in an airplane so I can die with my guys?"
Yep.
And I have respect for that. Like,
Me too.
because that means he's willing to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of I credit a lot of the American leaders because that's kind of who they were. Like, put me back in the plane then. You know, like, I want to go back in the plane with my boys and do that.
Rosenthal was very much like
Yes,
that.
absolutely. That's a good one. And the fact that he wasn't then even allowed to,
Yeah,
it shows you what, like, a virus does to your nation.
for sure. For sure. I think for me, what makes the enemy in this particular story is the nuts and the bolts. I think that the United States was trying to, like, I really like, my favorite imagery of the book was when Miller was talking about, like, we hit the oil fields and that was like the lungs of the fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was like, giving you all these human traits to these things that we were attacking, and that was fucking cool.
That was
to
cool.
see this, like, monster of, like, King Kong that we were, like, going up against. So
It did, you're right, because it painted an image in our heads of what industrialization actually is.
Yep.
As a
It's
war
everything.
machine. Because we understand industrialization in that we know that we are industrialized, but, like, do you really know what that means?
Right.
And do you know what it means during wartime?
Right.
All your factories changing what they do. And you're right. That was a very compelling part of his book. It's probably his best writing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, more questions, right? Okay. Does this story contribute to what makes today? Modernity. Like, when we look at where we are on planet Earth in 2024, does this story contribute to what we see on planet Earth
I would think so.
right now? Oh, yeah.
By, like, a
Fuck
huge
yeah.
margin.
Yeah.
I think it shows why people were scared to fuck with us for, like, 40 years,
Yeah.
which was like, America will build a second army while they engage you with their first army, which is a wild thing still to think about. And, like, now we kind of, I feel like our propaganda has shifted and now we, like, disregard that China can do kind of the same thing. But that's scary, and it demands respect.
Yeah. So,
But also the pushing of military technologies, like the fact that jet planes were in the
Right.
air.
yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So a lot of just scientific and engineering feats
Right.
that were pretty inspiring.
Yep.
For not just war, but life in general. We also came to the realization after reading this, at least I did, that America is willing to do some pretty shady shit for the greater, in their minds, the greater good.
Yeah, we're skipping over, folks, the bombing of Dresden.
Yeah.
The Tralfamadorians are not fans of us.
Shady shit.
Yeah.
So we've done some pretty unforgivable things that we now can sit here and look back on and be like, I guess we had the moral high ground because of the whole Nazi thing. But that's even difficult because we have a lot of Nazis in the United States.
Like, why do we have so many?
I don't know.
Because a lot of them were just like a lot of Americans. So they did. I wrote it down. They call them trolley tours, and it's the most I've liked America as a military complex. After the bombing, they would make their pilots and crews and just like people that were just on the base go and land and fly over the cities they destroyed. And they called them trolley tours because they're just like, you just need to see what you did.
Yeah.
And they even had some of them landed. I think I wrote down some of them landed. This one guy said he was walking around, and after his visit, he said, I was 20 years old and felt ancient.
Wow.
Just like that, it was never going to leave him. I hate Nazis, and the fuck did we do?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big one. So here is before I ask this last question, because this is gonna be a good question to end on.
Yep.
Anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to the Masters of the Air that we haven't touched on before we kind of like wrap this up in a nice little bow? Did you enjoy the book?
I did enjoy the book.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It wasn't
read it again.
It was not our best war literature that we have consumed.
It's not my worst.
It's not our worst. No, when we started with the Thermopylae, that was a little bit of.
I liked the Thermopylae. The Leyte Gulf one was the driest fucking shit I've ever read. That was way above my weight class.
Yeah, I was spoiled with that. I got the tin can sailors, but
I do have a Patton quote.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so this is that same Mooseburg place.
Mm-hmm.
After those tankers came in and stuff, Patton was on this fucking propaganda thing. And I feel bad because if you're a general, they make you do propaganda things.
For sure.
Right? So he's doing a propaganda thing, and like the story that Miller paints is fucking ridiculous. It's him with like a silver gun, and he's like walking around, just like I fucking hate you and you and you.
Like
so he's just like being the worst, and everyone's like, God damn it! Like I hate how the world works. And then he sees a couple of the actual POWs. And supposedly, he breaks character immediately. And he just, and then I'll try to use the voice that Miller describes. And he looks at the starved POWs and says, I'm going to kill these sons of bitches for this. All right, Patton. I kind of gave you some shit earlier in this story.
Hey, weirdo.
I kind of like it, though. Like, you see some, like, dudes, and they're just starved, and you're like, nope, not forgiving that.
You're
one.
gonna pay.
Like you don't get forgiven for that one.
No.
Also, wait, there was one more. I didn't write it down, but it was
This is also Patton.
No, this is the fucking Soviets during. I didn't realize it. So, I guess the Soviets, and I may not be remembering this correctly, but the Soviets during the unconditional surrender, they bring in the guy to sign the surrender forms because it's not Hitler, because Hitler killed himself like a fucking bitch, And then this guy, Zverkov or something, whatever his fucking name is, him and his officers, they turned to the guy and said, you need to leave now. And it's like nighttime, right? It's almost midnight because that's when the thing is going to happen. And they leave. And they said, they then start bear hugging each other and screaming. And then these waiters are ready and they run in with like champagne. And he starts doing like traditional Russian dances while all the generals are cheering him on. And it goes on. And like 3 generals had to be carried out because they get so drunk they can't stand anymore.
That's tight.
It's dope.
It's very Russia.
For how like shitty the Eastern Front was, like it's just hilarious to hear something like that.
One more point that I think I want to make before we conclude here. When we did the Battle of Lady Gulf, one of the points that you made when we were talking about kamikazes was how you said something along the lines of it's just a careless use of life. It's
right,
like
yes.
it's okay. So you know what? We arguably did the exact same fucking thing.
That's been my problem.
Yeah.
Right. I keep saying the not seeing the empathy, not seeing the other side. it costs lives every time we don't do it. And then
Yeah.
the missions are like, the fuck are we gaining from this?
Yeah, I'm not gonna call it. I mean, I imagine if we were to sit next to a guy who we're in heaven,
Right.
and we're talking to a guy who was on the bombing runs,
Sure.
and we were like, he would probably argue like these were 100% suicide missions. Like
Right.
we
Absolutely.
literally refer to him as that, and the type of jokes that Miller
That
mentions
song that
in
I
these-
sang at the beginning of the
the
epitaph.
song,
That's why I put
like
that one
it's
on there.
fucking. They knew for a fact that these were suicide runs, and so again, it's obviously as an American hard to be like, well, it's not like 9/11, blah blah, but it's
Right.
like, but it kind of. I'm sure some would argue these dudes in World War II that it was.
Well, going back to the tempo, that's a good point. Because going back to the tempoing strategy, what were we trading? Right? If we were losing 50% of bombers on a mission, what did we gain from it?
Mm-hmm.
And were we sure that that was the right call? It's hard because then you also don't want to like besmirch like the bravery of the dudes who were doing it.
Correct.
Because they were brave, they're way braver
Well,
than I was. Like,
Absolutely. Even though they were drunk half the time,
yeah.
but still.
But still. Also, the bravery in World War II is phenomenal from the Allies,
It's
from
insane.
America. Like POW camps, they had priests. Priests
Yeah.
jumped
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
airplanes over Germany
Yeah, wild.
so that they can then join soldiers in POW
It's
camps.
badass, dude.
I've
Make
never
that movie.
if you want me to go to your church,
Make that-
why am I hearing about this at 34? I went to Sunday school once,
Yeah.
and no one told me that. That would have sold me
Start with
hook,
that.
line, and
That's
sinker.
some
Like,
good propaganda.
by the way, just so you remember, we jumped out of airplanes in war-torn Germany just to help the spiritual health of
Right.
the soldiers. Like, yes, please sign me
Yeah,
up
yeah,
for
that
that.
sounds
How do
lit.
I help you do
What
that
are you,
more?
Spartans or some
Yeah,
shit?
like-
This is dope. Yeah. All right.
Hey, we did it.
Masters of the Air. Here we go, folks. We're going to ask this one last question. Are you ready? Was this moral? Was it ethical? And was it logical? Moral, ethical, logical.
You know, it's hard.
Isn't it? It's fun, though.
It's hard for the reasons that we've talked about for every conflict. Is like your 2020 vision. Like, was it logical in 2020 vision? No.
No, not at all.
By like our modern knowledge of the time, we missed so many of the things we should have done.
See, but this is why I fucking love this question, because in 2020, most of war is not going to be moral, ethical, or
Yeah.
logical, and that's sort of the point.
It's emotional.
Yeah, oh, totally.
And it's fucking World War II has that hubris stuff going on, right? Like Churchill is a warping factor. Eisenhower's a warping factor.
Yeah.
Patton's a warping factor.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It
I would-
is.
What would I say? I would say I'm not about. Okay, well, here's a caveat to that. Maybe a complication. We were studying this today in the Nuremberg trials. I was trying kids were like very fucking confused by it, and I got confused by it trying to explain it because in the Nuremberg trials, one of the big problems is nobody's ever charged a country for how they treated their own civilians before, as a war crime. Is that weird?
Mm.
Because no one's ever been like, America, you can't do that to your own people during wartime, you fucking lunatics. You did that to our people. And so I had to explain to them, we were in total war by the end of the war. We were bombing their civilians. They were bombing our civilians. That was all fair game.
I don't know. So when we looked at the Battle of Mogadishu and that warlord was like keeping food, like the United Nations was sending in food, and the warlord was like sitting on the stockpiles
Right.
of food, and then then we sent in the Marines, and the Marines were like, "We're gonna distribute this food for you
Yes.
if you don't fucking do it." So like that's close.
It is
right?
close, but that's after.
Yeah.
Nothing, as far as I know, global geopolitics, no one has ever tried to try a group of people for how they treated their own civilians during
Interesting.
wartime. So in my mind, World War II is a paradigm shift. And like, we don't have to fucking do this to each other anymore. Like, we don't have to kill each other for no reason anymore. We're past that because this is one of the positives of the crazy, barbaric, modern thing that is industrialization, which is terrible in so many ways. But a benefit is we don't have to kill each other anymore. Like, human manpower is not the only power anymore.
Have you been watching a lot of Star Trek?
No, I should. I love Star Trek.
Me too. It's always cool to see Captain Picard talk about like how just ancient and barbaric war is.
It is.
Yeah.
And especially before industrialization, because that's the manpower. That's who
Yeah.
builds your stuff. That's who kills your people.
Yeah.
And so if you take out the manpower, you take out their power. But
Yeah.
after industrialization, that's not really true, right?
Yeah. So I guess one of the cool things that we've learned from this story is we're better than this. We
Wait,
don't
yeah.
have to do this anymore.
So what's your take on moral, ethical, logical?
Like I think that's no, absolutely none. I don't think it's ethical in any way, shape,
Yeah.
or form when you have these men sitting here and saying this is fucking suicide and you got barely anybody coming back. Logical. I don't see out of all of the three of those, moral, ethical, logical, I think logical probably would be that would win out of all of them. Because in their minds they were like, let's just bomb the oil fields and then they won't have any oil. Let's just bomb the factories. So I see the logic. I don't see the ethics. I don't necessarily see the morals when they knew for a fact that fucking civilians were going to die.
That's so weird.
Morally, it's fucked.
Because I feel like logically, that's where I have the hardest time with. Okay,
Interesting.
so what would you have done? I was trying to think about it though. Like, okay, in the moment you're leading, what would you have done differently?
Like I'm leading the United States.
Yeah, you're leading the 8th. You're Spats, right?
Fuck.
Or Hap Arnold. Because in my mind, what I kept running into, and I could be wrong on this, like, what if game, but my what if game that I played like a couple weeks ago in my head was, I'm Spats or Hap Arnold. I see the casualty loss, and then I back off because I'm like, the fuck is this? Like, let's get better intelligence about what we're doing. And then in my what if, because I showed weakness, Churchill just takes my Air Force.
Okay, so my answer is I really liked when Eisenhower during D-Day used the air support to support ground troops.
Yeah.
And that's when they were really successful.
That's
so
true.
I think if the Air Force was completely dependent on what was happening on the ground, they're like, we need air support here, it would have been quicker.
So you wanted some like pre-modern like air support, like Vietnam Yadring stuff.
Yes. I think.
But what about the Luftwaffe? Because that Miller,
Hitler, they didn't know this, but Hitler wasn't putting his eggs in that basket anyway.
right?
So,
But Gallen's out at D-Day ish, but like he's weakened. What would I'm just trying to think, like, would Gallen have let you do that if you didn't already hit his plants? And would Churchill have let you get to D-Day before taking over your force?
yeah, it's a good question. I just, as far as my mind is
that's where you'd
concerned, I would be more apt to support the ground troops rather than like, let's drop bombs on these the pens, the submarine pens
Right.
that are just bouncing off these concrete.
And you're
things.
saying like by D-Day, so if you took over at D-Day, Spats retires, you take his spot, D-Day happens, you're not suddenly hitting those cities with the trains.
I don't think so.
You're fucking just trying to work on your front line.
Because I think that it's not. I don't think as many people would die
Okay.
in the Air Force, the Army Air Corps. I don't think
And
we're
we're
going to get
probably
as much.
both against bombing of Dresden.
Anti-Dresden bombing, yeah.
Like,
The
I
fire
love
bombing.
Slaughterhouse 5.
Yeah.
But like,
Not worth all the
is
death.
it worth it?
Yeah, I think that I guarantee you that. Sorry, what's his name? Who
Vonnegut?
wrote? I guarantee you, Kurt was like, "This is the." I'm sad that I had to profit from this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm pretty sure he said that.
Yeah,
Like, it's sad to me that I profited from this book about war that I made a lot of money on.
Yeah, his intro is hilarious to that book because he's like talking with his buddy, he's trying to like recount it, and the guy's wife just gets really mad, and he like ends the intro like, she's right, and then he starts the book.
There you go.
Like,
Yeah.
yep, you're Child Crusade or something is what he called it. It's really good.
So, thought provoking, really fun to learn.
It's crazy. It's part of our history.
I learned a fuck ton about this this series. And you know what's crazy? As you are listening to this, I have not finished the show yet.
Me either.
No.
It's hard to
No.
take in so much
Of one
sadness,
thing.
yeah.
And yeah, just we consumed a lot of that content, folks. It's like over 1,000 pages what we just did. Took us a long time.
Plus reading all the memos and stuff.
Here we are.
A lot.
We did it.
I loved it.
Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, we really appreciate you. That was really fun. We had a good time doing it. Hope you had a good time. Hopefully you had a good time listening. Share the show. Share the show with your friends, with your, sweet old grandmother who doesn't cuss. Have her listen to it. She'll love it.
What did my...
It's rank.
It was rank.
Would you like to say what what kind of stuff we're going to be doing next?
Stuff. Ancient stuff.
Ancient stuff. This gentleman is going to be coming on the show soon. We're reading this. Go ahead and pick up a copy of Summer 2009 by Andrew Colville. A journey of self-discovery amidst the Afghanistan war. It's a good read so far. It's a quick read. A lot quicker than Masters of the Air.
We'll have you on, Miller.
Yeah, Miller, come on. We're going to be also doing some... I'm going to be getting into some Native American history. And that's going to be fun. We're also going to be having some more veterans on the show.
Yeah, I'm loving our veteran intake.
It's the best.
It's been our uptick. It's been good.
Yeah, we have a new listener of the pod he's got his own veteran-owned coffee company in Pennsylvania.
Cool.
So it's been cool to see all the veterans climbing on board. I'm really into it.
Yeah. Give you guys a platform.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. We appreciate the shit out of you. And until next time, bonsai.